Hey guys, I just got done interviewing John Lear, and I want to give you an intro to who he is and give some explanations real quick. He was a Area 51 whistleblower, and you're going to notice the conversation starts like 2 minutes, 3 minutes in. I was receiving interference the whole time I was talking to him. My camera started acting weird. All of my recording equipment, let's just put it that way. All 3 different parts of my recording equipment, not even including the phone, all were receiving interference during this interview. So the interview does start 3 minutes late. But some of you don't know who John Lear is, so I'm going to tell you real quick. John Lear was a commercial airline captain for 40 plus years. He's the son of the Lear jet inventor. He's flown over 160 types of aircraft in 50 different countries in all types of flying: experimental, airline passenger, cargo hauling, movie works, stunt flying, aircraft ferrying, airdropping missions, speed racing, and flew for the CIA on all types of missions during the Vietnam War between 1967 and 1973. In 1988, John met Bob Lazar, a scientist who worked at the Department of Naval Intelligence in an above-top secret program which involved back engineering a propulsion system from a crashed extraterrestrial craft. And I want you to take one more thing in mind. John is known worldwide in this area. So we're very lucky to have him on as a guest today. Enjoy.
People, the massive turnout was not expected, but there was over 600 people that showed up, a few hundred, and we had to actually add an extra night to accommodate all the people. Well, it ignited a firestorm of UFO information, and it got so that it was so busy that my wife had to turn off my telephone and change my telephone lines and take all my files and put them away because she was tired of so many people calling. But Officer of 88, a guy named Gene Huff called me, and he was a appraiser in town. And he says, John, I'd like to make a deal here to get your information. I'd like to know how much it would cost. And I said, well, I'd like to help you, Gene, but my wife has hidden most of my stuff, and I don't have access to it now. But if I ever recover it, I'll certainly. Okay, I'm an appraiser, and what I'd like to do is, if you ever need an appraisal, I'll appraise your house and make it. We'll make a change where I'll appraise your house for all the information, or at least a copy of the information that you have. So pretty good, because I was in fact looking at that time for an appraisal of my house to get a second mortgage. So went to my wife and we discussed it. We decided to invite Gene over and make a deal, because we did need the extra cash. So in the summer of 1988, Gene showed up, and he brought with him a friend whose name was Bob Lazar. He introduced Bob, who then told me about his, and then this guy, Bob, introduced himself and gave me his credentials, and they included background and his degrees at MIT and Caltech, and I put those degrees, copies of them, behind my desk, and disappeared. I never saw him again.
Wow.
But anyway, Bob and I started, or Gene and I started talking about UFOs, and Bob sat there and rolled his eyes, couldn't be more disinterested, and more or less gave us the idea that you guys are nuts. There's no such thing as flying saucers. If there had been, I would have known about it, because I worked at the classified areas at Los Alamos, and that's where this stuff would have been, if there had been any. But in fact, there was stuff.
Basically, how did that spark Bob's job at Area 51? Most people who don't know who Bob is, Bob was an Area 51 employee. That's where this story is going. So basically, after that, you started talking about UFOs, and then this led up to Bob to apply with, I think, Dr. Teller?
Right, and I was over at Bob's house when he called Dr. Teller, and in
Livermore, California, right in our backyard, maybe 15 minutes from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, at Los Alamos,
Livermore, Lawrence Livermore Labs.
Lawrence Livermore Labs, and he said, "Well, Bob said that he would like to enter the scientific community." And Dr. Keller said, "Well, would you like to work here with me in California, or would you like to work in Nevada?" And Bob said, "I want to work at Area 51." And I thought this was pretty presumptuous, but that's what he did say. And then the next thing that happened was that Bob started getting calls from EG&G, or to go down to EG&G at McCarran Airport and get interviewed. And there was 3 interviews. I remember him coming back from the first one, and he said that he had aced the interview, that he had really told them what they answered the questions really scientifically and really well, that they were very impressed. On the second interview, I remember the first question that Bob told me they asked was, "Do you know John Lear, and what is your information about John?" And I said, "Yes, I know John. I think he sticks his nose in places where it doesn't belong." And what Bob told me then was he also sticks his nose in places where it doesn't belong.
So he didn't mention that to them at the time.
No.
But they'd find out, sure enough, in the future.
So then December 6th was his first trip up there, and I was flying for American Transair at the time. And he came over to my house a couple days afterward and told me that he sat down, he said, "I saw a disc today." And I immediately, "Theirs or ours?" And he said, "Theirs." And I said, "Did you get a picture?" And he said, no, it was at Area 50. And I said, "You went there?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "They took me there, and I more or less was hired." So that's when he told me that he had seen it. And I said, "Well, Bob, why are you over here?" I said, "Why don't you work for a couple of months and then find out what's going on and then tell me, because and it's going to be a lot of problems when they find out who you're visiting." He said, "Well, it's like this, John. I've seen you take so much flack over the last 6 months that I wanted to tell you you were right. You were right on. It's all true. I'm taking the risk here of telling you you were right."
That was very heroic of Bob. And you know what I want to bring to light is Bob Lazar is the original Edward Snowden. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that, but that's what I truly believe.
Right.
Bob Lazar was the first Edward Snowden.
Right. That's right.
And that is a huge part of the story that I want people to realize. Bob, in some ways, is bigger than Edward Snowden because this goes beyond our earthly concerns. This is connected to the source. This is connected to everything.
Right.
So basically, next, Bob tells you about, hey, they're test flying a saucer. We're gonna go out to he took you to the black mailbox, I believe.
No, it was beyond that. He said they're gonna. This was on let's see, April. This was March
of '89. It was the month before I was born, because the month later was the security incident. I remember on the day I was born.
March 22nd of 1989. And he said, actually it was the 21st, because he said, "John, they're going to test fly tomorrow night. Do you want to go and see?" And I said, "Yeah, how?" And he said, "Well, I know a road on the backside of the test site that we can drive in, and we can not violate the security roads." And I said, "Okay." So the next night was the 22nd of Bob's wife and Bob. We got in my motorhome and we drove into the backside of the security of Area 51 and stopped just short of the line. I took out my telescope, and as we were setting it up, it was actually about 10 minutes to 9 in the evening. And as we were setting it up, we saw a bright light coming up behind the mountains, looking over at Groom Lake, and it began doing high-speed maneuvers, looked like us, fast changes in speed and direction. And so I finally got my telescope set up, and had a chance to look at it. And just as I started looking at it, it started settling down behind. I got a good look at it as it started settling. It was obviously a disc, flying disc. It was a golden color. It was radiating something gold, and I don't know what that was. It was radiating off the platform of the vehicle, and as incredible as it seems, we had a video camera sitting on the bumper of the motorhome, but nobody thought to pick it up and take a picture. But anyway, we watched it for about 5 or 6 minutes when it disappeared, and I tried to get Gene Huff to take a look, but as I turned around to let him look, I accidentally hooked my foot around one of the tripod legs and hooked it so that it moved the tripod and couldn't see it.
Oh, man. So, John, getting into the last question here, because next week you'll see what I'm going to lead into here. So 2 weeks later, you had your first encounter with the intense security on the day I happened to be brought into this earth, April 6th, 1989. Tell the listeners what happened that night, and then that's where we'll leave it off for next time.
Okay, April 6th was the third time we went out there, and there was me, Bob, Gene Huff, Bob's wife, and his sister. We rented a car because the motorhome had a bad, and we started driving down this road, and we had in the trunk a Geiger counter. Bob, for some reason, had brought a pistol with him, and we started driving down this road, and in front of us we saw lights. It was like 2 or 3 cars, and we kept going, and then pretty soon it looked like they were heading for us. So I said, okay, let's turn around. We don't want to get caught around here. And Bob said, no, I can't afford to get caught because I work there. And so we turned around and headed back down this road towards the highway 375, I think it is. And and I security was going to catch us, so we stopped. I jumped out, started setting up the telescope. Bob said, I'm going out into the desert. You guys come and pick me up when security's gone. And he headed out into the desert. About that time, security stopped, slid to a halt, and I ran up to the security guard, and I said, what do you guys want? Are you doing a dope deal here? And they said, no, we're not doing a dope deal. We need security here, and we need to see your driver's licenses and social security cards. So we showed them that, and they said, okay, you need to get out of here. We can't force you to leave, but we can make it awful uncomfortable if you do stay here. So we started out, actually we went out, and then Bob came out of the desert and unfortunately made some comments like that he had his his gun pistol pointed right at one of the guys and was ready to pull the trigger if they tried anything, which unfortunately was recorded on. But anyway, when we got Bob, we started out and hit the road. And as we hit the road, the sirens and lights of Lincoln County Police were on, and we were stopped by them. And they told us to pull over, get out of the car, put our hands up on the roof. And he said, I got 2 questions. I want to know where the gun is, and I want to know why is there 5 people on the in the car now when there was only 4 at the test site. So we hemmed and hawed around for about 45 minutes to an hour. Never did tell him anything, and then pretty soon the policeman says, I don't know why I'm being told this, but I'm being told to let you go and to tell you to head to Las Vegas and not to head back here again. And so that's when we all got back in the car, headed towards Las Vegas, and didn't discuss the operation until we were in the car headed back to Las Vegas. And at that time, I thought that we had talked among ourselves that it had to be pretty serious, and that we were not going to mention it.
So basically, the one last part for listeners, the little teaser. Bob receives a phone call the next day.
I received a phone call from Dennis Mariana, his boss, and said, Bob, don't go to the airport today. He said, I'm going to pick you up. Bob said, okay, and Dennis told him, picked him up, and said, drove him to what was then called the Air Force Base up at in Tonopah, and it's now called Creech Air Force Base. And they took him to Creech, and as Bob told it, they pulled him out of the car with a gun in his ear and said, "Now, Bob, when we gave you this clearance," he said, "it didn't mean that you were supposed to take all of your friends to the test site and show them the saucer." And so then they said, "Now, do you want to work here or not?"
With a gun to his head, correct? Well, that's where we're going to leave it off today, John. It was an honor talking to you again. And next week, the story continues. The legend, the original Edward Snowden, Bob Lazar, and the great man, John Lear, who set the wildfire of Area 51 across not only the United States, but the world. Thank you, John, and you have a great evening.